started now. We've got a lot of participants. Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Bassetti. I'm going to be the moderator today for Build With Her. And our speakers are going to be Zainab Latifi, who's going to talk about her product Lifesaver, and Sade Ayinde, who's going to talk about her product Diaper Duty. And I'm really excited to share with you guys a lot of the awesome information we have. So what is productsbywomen.com? So we are building awesome products for people around the world, people of color as well as women and all kinds of people who want to get involved in the product space. Technology is a very broad topic, and we want to be able to champion a lot of different diverse voices.
Quick reminder to everybody on this event, please mute yourselves just so it does not interfere with the quality of the event. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So where was I? Yeah, so that's what Products by Women is. And we're really excited to continue to have events for you guys. And we have a lot of different events in the pipeline. One of them is these kind of webinar series that you see right now, and a lot of other stuff. So what is our goal? So our goal is to build a big community around this space. And we want to bring together diverse voices, women in tech, product leaders, engineering leaders, and entrepreneurs. And we want to be able to share and champion these stories that these women bring. And we want to also provide mentorship support and also reinforce best practices within the industry so we can build and scale this community, and also help you guys in your career, whether it's professional or in your entrepreneurship journey. So we have a mentorship program. Super exciting, right? Everyone wants to be part of a mentorship program. And this is a great way for you to not only talk to someone who has expertise in an area that you want to kind of hone your skills in, but this is also a way for you to get matched with recruiters. And I know that this is a very tough time, especially with job searching and trying to figure out your passions. And this is just one channel that we have that we hope can democratize access to resources. And we have a lot of events. So if you sign up for our newsletters, you'll be able to see these events. We also have a website. It's called productsbywomen.com. And that's where you can sign up for a lot of these events. And within our website, we also have featured articles. So these featured articles are going to encompass around the product leaders that are speaking at our events, even some products, company spotlights, and a lot of other articles. And we also have a podcast series, which is super exciting. I know myself in particular, I love podcasts because it's a great way for me to multitask in terms of like going out for a run, and also listening to women talk about their products and their experiences in certain spaces. I'd highly recommend this. I myself have listened to a lot of these podcasts, and they're super inspiring. And it's just awesome to listen to women who have overcome so much and got to where they are. And we've also collaborated with a lot of different organizations and speakers. This is just a handful of them. We've collaborated with a lot of other companies too, and we're excited to continue to do that in the future. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Zainab, who's going to talk more about her experiences and her product.
Hi, everybody. Nikki, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you confirm?
Yes.
All right, great.
Yes.
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening in. I'm Zainab Latifi, and I'm the head of product of Lifesaver. Lifesaver is an early stage fintech in New York City. And so the next 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you about my experience at, like just the startup life, what that's like, and what product is at a startup, and, my experiences. And it's a lot. Like I've learned so much in just like the past 1 year, and it was really hard for me to honestly like put something together, which is just 15 minutes because I have so much to share. But this is how I thought I would break it into. So I'm going to start with like why I chose this life, like why I chose the startup and product management life, and then what attracted me to Lifesaver in specific, and what my day-to-day looks like, and my biggest learnings, and then hacks for newbies who are trying to you know, break into product management and do something similar to what I'm doing currently. So before I get in, just a little bit background on me. I grew up in Bangalore, and I feel like my background really impacted where I am today. So Bangalore is the tech capital of India. It's like the startup capital. Every other person is an entrepreneur. Every other person is an engineer. So I was raised in that environment, and you know, startups are not like a mystery to me. I've seen that. I remember I was just 16 years old and I was interning at this startup, and it was a food tech startup in Bangalore. And I remember going into the office, and it was literally this tiny office with like one desk, and the CEO was right in front of me. And I pitched ideas to him, and I saw the ideas come to life. He took it very seriously, and that feeling was so unreal. It made me feel so good about, you know, what I was doing, and just seeing that impact and change happen so quickly. I knew that I wanted to get into that. But my traditional education has been in economics. But I honestly think like studying economics has helped me so much as a product owner and a product person, because when you think like an economist, you think about what is economics? It's basically the study of how people behave, right? Why people do what they do. And I think it's helped me in trying to understand what motivates people, what motivates our users, how to kind of, you know, like measure trade-offs and all of that. And then I think like Techstars, my experience at Techstars really finally introduced me to the world of product management. So I got into the Barclays Accelerator after I graduated last year. So for those of you who don't know what Techstars is, it's basically a startup accelerator, and it's like a 3 to 4 month program, and it's a pretty intense experience. So what it is basically they select like 10 companies, 10 really early stage pre-seed companies, and they're thrown into like a lot of workshops and one-on-one mentorships. And you kind of, it's basically like summer camp for startups. And so I was helping run the program. And so I got this opportunity to meet so many founders and, you know, like discover all of these amazing things that they were doing and problems that they were solving, and investors I met and mentors. And I started hearing things like, it's really important to talk to your users for your business. And it's really important to think about your product roadmap. And I'd never heard of these things before. And I started realizing that being the product person at a startup is you basically have your eyes at every aspect of the business, right? And so I wanted to do that. And I also think that I'm an optimist, so I got into this. And before I tell you like what attracted me to Lifesaver in specific, I want to tell you a little bit about the product itself. So we sit in this really interesting space, right? So we sit between people and banks. So we realize that people have a problem. People are not using really good financial products. They're really like missing out on that because they just don't have the access to discover it and to like literally open their accounts digitally. And they miss out on these products, and they end up sticking with really bad banks and bad financial products because they think that switching or closing an account is really complex and overwhelming. And then on the bank side, we realize the problem is that there are these amazing financial institutions, community banks and credit unions that have been serving the local economies for decades. But what they lack is they lack technology. And because of that, people are unable to access their amazing products. And so we sit in the middle. So our app, what it does is basically a marketplace. And after you enter, you know, a little bit about yourself and your personal information, we match you to these financial products based on your needs. And what attracted me to Lifesaver, two things. First, its mission. I mean, no one, like, there's this whole like underserved community of like unbanked and underbanked people here in America who have been like historically left out of the traditional financial system. It's just too expensive for them to have a bank account. And at Lifesaver, we believe that you shouldn't have to pay to have a bank account and to keep your money in a safe place and to see your money grow. And so I really resonated with the mission, and then also the team. So a little background here, Karen, Corey, and I, the picture there, we met at Techstars. So I mean, we bonded so much at Techstars because Techstars, we were spending 18-hour days together. We were eating every meal together. And by the end of it, we were best friends. And I wanted to, be a part of their team and do what they were doing and build great products with them. And so that's why I chose Lifesaver. And so a little bit about like what my day looks like. So you'll hear like this meme that's like on the slide currently, like, the product manager not listening to the salesperson or sales request. That's very common in big companies. But when you're at a startup, especially early stage startup like me, where like Lifesaver, where the team is so tiny. So when I joined, our team was 3 people. Now we're 7. And you can't just think from the product manager's point of view, right? I do like everything. So you have to my day every 30 minutes, or even sometimes, shorter than that, switches from each parts of the business. So I start with marketing and then I move on to fundraising, because right now we're in the middle of a raise. And then I talk to investors, and then I talk to our partners, and I talk to users, I talk to our engineering team. So it's so many different things in one day, and it's definitely not typically what a product manager usually does. One interesting thing that I do as a product manager at Lifesaver is I always basically represent the user, because there's so many different parts of our business that need attention, like the banks and our other stakeholders, that someone needs to be the voice of the user. So I do that on a daily basis. And another thing that's super interesting is about product management that I find is that a good product manager just doesn't ship features. A good product manager delivers business impact. And I think that's one thing that I really enjoy about my job, is just the high level thinking, right? So I think about the company strategy. I think about every aspect of the business and our goals, and every single thing that I do every day is just for the company's success. It's not just for the user, just for the bank. And it's not just about writing user stories, right? It's about thinking about the business as a whole when it's an early stage startup. So putting on multiple hats. And then the biggest learnings I've found in the past, working for Lifesaver, is that at an early stage startup, everything is the product, because our product right now is not fully developed. So everything is living in our head. So in a way, the founders, we are the product. In a way, when we're fundraising, that's also our product. We're creating impressions for our raise. We are, we're doing marketing, and that's sometimes when I talk to partners or just investors, I'll get product ideas. So everything we're doing right now has to do with product. And then I remember when I was starting off with product management, I talked to a lot of PMs, CPOs at other FinTech companies. I spoke to UX researchers and other product managers, and I realized that everyone is very unique and has a unique way of doing things. And I realized that I would have to create my own way of doing things for Lifesaver, because there's no product management is not a science. It's there's no playbook or manual, and you kind of have to curate your own process for your team. Every team is different. Every product is different. Every company culture is different. And so I had to build that from the ground up. And I think that was one of the most exciting things that I've ever done. And then I realized one of my biggest learnings was, everyone says talk to your users. That's the best way to come up with solutions. But this is the hardest part, talking to your users, especially when you're in FinTech, right? So when I talk to our users or just people to do interviews and just hear about what motivates them, I talk about money. And people don't like talking about money. Money makes people really overwhelmed. Money makes them scared. And so people are usually not very honest when they, talk to me. So getting to know your users is hard. And I'm still figuring that out. I think I've just been getting better by talking to more and more people. I talk to my friends and friends of friends and, like strangers sometimes. And yeah. Another thing is that when you're at an early stage startup and you're the product owner, there's a huge scarcity problem. You have very limited capital. You don't have 2 engineering teams. You don't have like 50 engineers at your disposal where you can kind of wave a magic wand and like features get shipped out, right? You have like a few engineers, and so you have a lot of scarce resources, and I think execution is the most difficult part, because you have ideas, you have all of these half-baked ideas baking in your head, and you want to execute and implement on it, but you're restrained on time, engineers, and money. So, and then one thing that I find very challenging is nothing is perfect or permanent at an early stage company. You kind of have to get away with the idea of like, if you're not embarrassed of your product, you're doing something wrong, because like your product can't always be perfect. And also like you can't get attached to your ideas. Nothing is permanent, right? You might discover something tomorrow. You might talk to 100 users in a month, and you might discover something else, and you might totally shift. So nothing is permanent. Don't get attached to ideas. And then for like all the newbies who are trying to get into product management, like here are some hacks. The way that I did it is that I talked to a lot of PMs and talked to like industry specific PMs. Like Lifesaver is B2B to C, and like that looks very different from like B2B products, and that looks very different for just consumer facing products. So talk to people and learn about your industry, because FinTech is so different from healthcare, and that's very different from just, like the future of work. And so to get to know your industry, read like newsletters there are a lot of people on Twitter who, have weekly newsletters, sign up for that, hear about what's going on, because that really like shapes that knowledge will really affect how you come up with ideas, because there are certain things, like some ideas that I have had in the past, which I literally can't implement because of the financial services industry. Like there's so much regulation, there's so many compliance problems. So get to know your industry, and then get to know your users as much as possible. So find out like the company that you're, either trying to start or you're trying to join, the demographic that you're targeting. Talk to those people, get to know them, find out what motivates them, what their pain points are, what do they do like day to day, what do they like, and just get to know them. And that will help you come up with creative solutions for their problems. Pay attention to your own behavior. So this is like the most recent thing that I've learned. So during quarantine, I've been a TikTok addict, and I've been using it so much, and it makes me so happy. It's like a good distraction from the real world. And then I started picking up like my own like behaviors, right? So like what about TikTok do I like? What about their UI? What gets me addicted? And I've been trying to pull those things to Lifesaver, trying to pull those things into a FinTech app, which is unheard of. But I think like just paying attention to your own behavior helps a lot in becoming a product owner. So we have questions coming, so you can ask me questions. But if I don't get to answer your questions, or if you want me to share more, feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn at Zainab Latifi, or just email me at zainab@getlifesaver.com. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to you, Sade.
Thank you, Zainab. All right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now. Hi, everyone. My name is Sade Ayinde. I'm a technical product manager at Relativity, which is an unstructured data management company, and the founder of Diaper Duty, which is my own app. And so just a little bit about me. I figured that I would sort of take things back. In undergrad, I studied economics, similar to Zainab. And I love econ. Like I love thinking about how the world works. And I was really passionate about like global issues. And I actually interned in a lot of non-tech places. In undergrad, I interned at the State Department. I studied abroad a ton in Southeast Asia, South Asia. I, did summer programs and things like that. And so I sort of had this like world perspective. And at first I thought I was going to actually consider like doing like a follow-up on econ, like either considering a master's or a PhD. And I realized that I wanted to sort of take a break and work first. So I actually ended up my first job out of college was as a consultant, an analytics consultant at Deloitte. And I started out in their DC office working with federal clients, building out tools to help show their data, visualize their data differently, programming in Python and R. And then I actually moved out to Seattle, where I went to our commercial side, where I worked with our West Coast clients, working with healthcare, with our main healthcare SaaS product at the time that we were selling to different healthcare providers and states and things like that, and commercial insurance providers. And so as then I got promoted to data scientist, and I liked my work. Like I loved that I was able to switch projects and learn so much. But after a while, I started to think about, okay, like after consulting, what is it that I really want to do? And I realized that tech was more of my interest. And I think that something that's really important is to understand is that like as a data scientist, you're always like very data driven, right? Like you're looking at data sets all the time. When you get new information, your decision changes, all of that, which is like fantastic. But I think that as you move to a product manager perspective, you become more very like data informed, which is a different approach where you're always looking at metrics, you're always talking to the customer, you're always talking internal tools and using that to constantly drive your decisions and iterate quickly. And so I kind of use that to make my pivot into tech. And I would say that something that surprised me is that I would feel like hiring at an early stage startup is a little bit more difficult as opposed to a more established tech company. Because I think as Zainab displayed with Lifesaver, there's so much that's at stake when it comes to early stage startups. And so sometimes they're really, really picky about who they're bringing on and who they're onboarding. And so I had a few different options. And when I was looking, I ended up at Relativity, and there I'm currently a technical product manager. So I kind of want to go into like what I thought might be helpful was kind of pulling up some things from my resume to kind of talk about the tools that I use and what I do, and my day-to-day really changes. And at Relativity, when you're working with the SaaS product, this whole new world of DevOps like came to me. And I studied economics, I was very analytical, but going into sort of like cloud, IT, it's just a very different world. And I think like going to a very like a raw software company was also very different for me. And so that really changed my perspective. I think that as a product manager, you wear so many different hats, right? You're the product owner, you're the business analyst, sometimes you're the systems engineer, you're a consultant to other teams, externally, internally, and you're a cheerleader for your own teams. And so for me at Relativity, I work with production engineering, which is our main department that sort of drives engineering changes throughout our 70 engineering teams. And I work with performance engineering and test engineering. And so I work with a lot of people, a lot of teams to help them build their core platforms using agile practices. And so I didn't really have exposure to agile or Scrum prior to, and we can talk more about that during the Q&A about certificates or trainings and things like that. But that was something that I had to learn. And I remember, I think like the first 4 months of learning, of being on the job, I was like on YouTube after work all the time, like looking up things about like CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, DevOps, Scrum, like all these things, and really kind of going straight into engineering because it was a whole new world to me. We do a lot of product road mapping, and we use tools like Jira and AHA. And AHA specifically for product road mapping. Jira is more helpful for things like stand-ups and sprint reports and looking at your burn down charts and everything like that, dealing with your sprint goals. And then a lot of Tableau. So we're not really using, previously I was programming in Python and R in my previous position, but there aren't really times when I find myself doing that at this company. Occasionally I have to go into SQL, but Tableau is sort of used more for business analysis and looking at metrics that are pulled from either Jira or New Relic. And New Relic is a software that is used to pull engineering release data. So it looks at performance environments and how clients are experiencing our product and how different clients are experiencing our products and looking at downtime and all these really important things when we're talking about products, because something that PMs are often criticized about is that we love features, we love adding all these new cool things to our products, but we have to look at what the client is actually experiencing from a performance perspective. And lastly, I said with partner with cross-functional teams. And so product management, like there's so much that's in it, sometimes you're doing project management, sometimes you are working with data analysis and doing business sort of work and reporting up. And other times you're getting creative and providing roadmaps that are going to be helpful to other teams and engineering managers. So it's really sort of a hodgepodge. And there isn't really something that you like study to become a product manager. I think it's just a coincidence that Zainab and I are both econ majors, but I promise they did not plan that. But I have met people that studied bioengineering in undergrad, that did liberal arts, that did mathematics or finance and made a switch over. And so it really kind of differs, but it's more about the skill sets that you develop. And so moving forward, I do want to talk about Diaper Duty, which is my app and my one-person startup at the moment. Diaper Duty is a GPS-based navigation app that provides access to changing stations and family restrooms for caretakers, parents, and our users. And I actually came up with the idea for Diaper Duty last year. And I had been talking to so many people and talking to customers and doing my research. And I decided to actually move forward with it. And I joined 1871, which is an incubator based in Chicago here, to kind of help me with support, because the founder journey, sometimes it can be a really lonely one. And so being able to find a community, being able to find resources, people that will really help you, and there's a lot of people that are willing to help you, I think that is like the best path moving forward. So I think that as a founder, sometimes we get so caught up on the solution that we sort of forget about what the customer experience and what the customer is looking for. I kind of put this graphic up because this kind of reminds us to always be thinking about our users. And so I think that it says customers will buy a skateboard that's made of carbon and polyurethane wheels and all these fancy, features, but really they just want something that works, that makes them, go ahead and skate in the park, right? And founders, sometimes when you're thinking about what your next app is, what your next idea is, it is so focused on the solution. And sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm going to do blockchain and FinTech and, it's going to be merged with this and it's going to be on the cloud and all this stuff. And really, we have to think about, sometimes you just have to ship the product and just see what happens and keep iterating on that, instead of having, a bunch of features on one thing. And this kind of leads into this. I've just put this Play-Doh here because I think that as a founder, you're going to be constantly iterating, you're going to be constantly changing, and that is always going to change. And you have to be malleable to everything. I think that I've said this already, but we can't be so fixated on a solution. And there's so many ways that how it worked for one person is not exactly how it's going to work for you. Some people spend 5 years, 10 years, working on their startup before something happens or they get big or, whatever. Some people decide to bootstrap as opposed to raising money. And so there's so many different ways that people go about it. And sometimes people want to get acquired or maintain full ownership. And so it looks very different. But I think that as a founder, and when you're looking at your product, you really have to be flexible and just be able to start talking to people. Sometimes I felt like for a long time before I went ahead with my product, I was always in my head. And I was like, no, and as a, someone who's still analytical based, I'm always thinking okay, well, if this happens, this needs to happen. And what if this happens? I should pause. You're always kind of thinking about the what ifs. And when it comes to being a founder, you just kind of have to launch and, go for it and just iterate and iteate. And, I think Zainab said this, your first product is going to be a piece of shit. It's not going to be that great, right? We can look at the first, iteration of MySpace and, the first iteration of Groupon. And if you really look at what they first put out, they're not that great, but people found value in it. And then over time, it started to get, you know, really pretty and all the features and everything that was really workable for customers. So think about that. So if you have any other questions, I'll be staying on for Q&A, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Diaperduty.io is our website, and I have a personal website, sadeayinde.com. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sade, and thank you, Zainab, for that awesome presentation. We're going to get started with our Q&A right now. Let me just pull up the questions. Okay, perfect. So I have a question for Zainab. Do you generally enjoy startup culture? How do you find the general hours and the office and the diversity?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I really enjoy it. I think it depends on your team, to be completely honest. I've seen a lot of startups with very toxic culture, I'm not gonna lie, but depends on your founders, depends on also like you being the first employee or you being a part of the founding team, you kind of create the culture. So it's up to you, like how you want to shape the company. And I see another question from Leah, who is asking about like how much impact do I actually make on the startup, and are my ideas being heard and implemented? So again, like I think it's up to you to like take initiative and like go after it. I think at a startup, like everyone's busy doing so many things, like you just kind of have to run with things. And yeah, I think diversity is really important to us at Lifesaver. We're female led, we're female majority, women of color. So very, very, ooh, the screen just changed. But yeah, does that answer your question, Nikki?
Yes, that sounds awesome. Thank you so much for that. And then I have a question for Sade. What was your first step you took when you actually decided to build your app?
I think talking to people, because I was like talking to friends and kind of like seeing what was like their ideas and like whether this was actually something that was workable. But I would say that actually talking to mentors. So talking to mentors personally in my life. And once I joined 1871, they have access to a directory of mentors in product and marketing and sales and tech and legal. And that really helped me just like talking to people that were more experienced to get a better idea of what was next. Because I think for me, coming from a technical angle, I knew what I needed to do to build it and like what to go forward with. But thinking about things in a different way from those that are more seasoned in the game and getting their perspective was really beneficial.
Yeah, I completely agree with the note on talking to seasoned people, because I feel like especially in any industry that you're in, it's always good to lean on a mentor or someone who has expertise in that area, because they can give you a lot of advice. And I've found that people are always more than happy to help.
Absolutely.
And then, so next question for Zainab, how do you approach investors as an early stage startup?
Oh my God, I can go on about this for like the entire day. But honestly, like, so yeah, we're in early stage, so we're raising our seed round. So it's a mix of VCs and angels. I think the approach is that cold emailing usually doesn't work with investors. You have to be, you know, in their network. So I would say just network, reach out to as like everyone who's within your network and tell them like, you know, you want to talk to VCs, you want to talk to angels, and people will help you. You'll be surprised. People will make those connections. You need to go on LinkedIn and like, you know, hunt for like mutual connections and like kind of just get your way in. And I think like the approach is like, you just have to be yourself when you're talking to investors, because this is, you know, it's not a short relationship. You have the relationship with your investor until you exit or, you know, IPO. So just be yourself, and it's kind of like dating, to be completely frank with you, investor and founder relationships. So you just be yourself, you know, ask the difficult questions, and yeah.
Awesome. And then I have one more question for you, Zainab. What are some skills or software we should get more acquainted with and learn about if we're trying to get into PM roles without prior technical experience?
Softwares and technical tools. I mean, you can like check out Jira, you can check out like Trello boards. honestly, at the startup level, like so early on, like I think initiative matters more. Like we've been, you know, hiring, and we look at people who are more like ready to learn and just like self-teach them things, because there's just so many things out there that we need to learn and like we don't know. And it's like, even if you come with no technical background, but you are like this kind of person who likes to teach yourself from YouTube videos and Googling, literally, like that works. That's good enough for us, honestly. You don't have to have like a full-on like list of softwares that you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And then, so this question is, it can be for Zainab or Sade, whoever wants to answer it, but do you have any recommendations for those looking to make a career change into PM? Our viewer is finding it hard to find opportunities that have a minimum requirement of 2 to 3 years of experience as a PM.
Sure. I can take that question. I would say that if you're looking to transition to PM, your network is going to be your biggest advantage. And then we can talk about education in terms of certificates or things like that. But being able to join, I mean, right now things are virtual, but even Products by Women that post, you know, different job opportunities. There's Built In, which has different local chapters. There's like Built in Chicago, Built in LA, Built in Boston, that posts just mostly tech jobs and tech related opportunities. Women in Product is a really big one, and they actually have women in product throughout different cities. And so connecting with your local chapters, because all these different groups, there's also Black Women in Product, but all these different groups are there to really help you, to help motivate you, to help give you advice and opportunities. I actually just connected with the Black Woman in Product, and there's so many amazing Black women that work, you know, at Slack, at Twitter, at Google, that I have at my disposal that are available for one-on-ones or available for referrals. To follow up on the second question, I think that, so I got my certificate, my Scrum certificate in product ownership, but I'm not 100% gonna say it helped me get my job, because I got it, I think like halfway through the interview phase. And I had been interviewing with other startups and like one big tech company. And I don't want to say it helped or it hurt, but I will say that now that I'm on the job, knowing Scrum, being familiar with it, is really beneficial. Like using Jira, that is all we use. Being familiar with Tableau. So I think being able to show like your interest or competency, a lot of these things, you know, for Tableau, you can create your own portfolio and have that available on your personal website. Or I think Tableau, it's called Tableau Mondays, where it's like a community challenge of a Tableau data set. And so there's those sort of opportunities aside from a certificate and networking that help you sort of get your foot in the door and show competency in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally agree with you on like just having like a basic understanding on foundations. So Jira is commonly used as a ticketing tool. A lot of teams use that for a lot of their Jira stand-ups or Scrum meetings, and not only just being able to know Tableau, but if you know any other analytical or insight tools, like Google Analytics or like Amazon Analytics, those are really important too to know, just to further your technical foundation. And then I'm getting, so I have another question for Sade or Zainab. How do we find mentors, and are there any dependable sources which we can fall upon?
So the way that I've done it from personal experience is like okay, so you know the ways that you can get mentors is like through LinkedIn and just like networks, but I think the way that you maintain good mentor relationships and actually make meaningful mentor-mentee relationships is when you have chemistry between, like you basically, they need to like you and you need to like them back, and it has to be a two-way street. You can't expect it to be like, okay, just because they're a mentor, they're going to help me every time. You have to be very mindful to also give back and help other people. And so I think as you do that, like as you help people, they'll help you and they'll introduce you to people. So it kind of works like a chain. Just like be yourself and like ask good questions. You know, like when you go into a mentor meeting, like don't like go unprepared. Have like solid asks, and yeah, be mindful of their time. don't waste people's time.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just for the rest of our viewers, Sade did a great job putting down some mentorship programs that are available. So merit.co for mentors and Lunch Club for mentors as well.
Yes, sorry, I corrected the link, but it's getmerit.com. But Merit is a coaching platform where you can talk to a lot of like very seasoned, high level people in tech. And so that it's usually like a 30-minute session. And like Zainab said, you have to do your research ahead of time, but it's completely free. And so if you're interested, I would definitely go there. I also saw Lunch Club, which is kind of like it used to be in person. Now with COVID, it's virtual, but virtual meetups locally in your city with people from different sectors, even the same sector. But I would say that like reaching out via LinkedIn just to talk to people. So I've been, even regards to like my own app or just in general career, like I've always done that, I think since college, just reaching out via LinkedIn. And I think 9 times out of 10, people will respond and set up a time just to chat. And it's not that every connection that you make has to be sustained. Sometimes you have that information, you have the interaction, and sometimes it's just not something that's going to continue down the line. But there's also going to be those really great relationships that you do find where you meet, whether it's quarterly or monthly, to check up and check in on each other. And there's also like sponsors, but that's a whole separate conversation between the difference of mentors and sponsors. But
yeah. And then Sade, another question for you. So how did you even get the idea for Diaper Duty? What was the inspiration behind it?
Sure. So I spent years as a caretaker, but I think I can remember the one specific instance. I was like walking to a public restaurant, so a chain restaurant across the US, and I saw this woman with her 2 children, and she was changing her child's diaper like right in front of the restaurant. And I was just like, okay, like maybe she was just in a rush, whatever. And I was ordering my food. I went to the restaurant ordering my food, and I saw the same lady come in, order her food, sit down. So I was like, why didn't she just use like the changing restroom? Like, why did she go outside? So I just like checked, and there was no like changing station whatsoever. And I'm not going to say the name, but it's a very public chain restaurant. And so I think I was shocked in that wasn't something that was more available. And then after that, I kind of just started taking mental notes of like when I would go to like Target, when I would go to, other places, and I would notice, when they had changing stations or larger restrooms or restrooms for those that are disabled. And I realized that there isn't, for private establishments, private enterprises, there isn't a requirement to do that. There have been laws that have been pushed and everything like that, but there is no directory. There is nothing that can be helpful for caretakers, for new parents, for parents that are traveling to a new city and aren't familiar with what common places are available for their babies. And so that was the original sort of idea that I guess lit the fire. And after talking with customers, with moms that were my friends, I realized that this was a very common problem that they always had to struggle with. And I want to talk about COVID because COVID kind of made me change and pivot a little bit. And I remember one of my mentors was like, well, I know you're trying to launch this summer, but do you think that with COVID, people are really going to be like changing their diapers in public places and are going to be really open to that? And he was like, maybe like in a year and a half, but what are some ways to kind of think about to still service that population? Like that population is always going to be there, but what are some ways to think about that in this unique time? And so that kind of made me think about what other features to add to the app, or how to slightly pivot to include testing centers on the map, or something that would be helpful as well to parents and caretakers.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's like the biggest power, having a mentor, right? Like you have this board of directors who's going to help you if you have any questions, or you might need to pivot your product. And that's really good that you kept that into consideration, especially because times are so crazy now and people are less likely to kind of go outside. And I have another question for you, Sade. How do you build a technical team?
Well, it's a team of 1.
Okay.
So there's that. I may not be the best person to answer that. Zainab, do you have any thoughts on?
I think like at Lifesaver, the way that we're thinking about building our technical team is, the technical team like can't be a yes man kind of a person, right? So we ask them to build something. They can't just be like, all right, we'll build it exactly the way that you specified it. They have to be creative. They have to like question everything, be curious. At this stage, we can't just have yes man type of people on our team. So people who are creative, people who will think about all aspects of the business, not just the technical. Like everyone needs to be thinking about all aspects of the business and not just do as they're told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think when you're working in an environment that's very fast paced, you have to be creative. You have to think on your feet, and it's a space where you have to be willing to take risks as well. Then I have another question for both of you. So what is the most difficult part of working in a startup?
Wow. For me, honestly, when I joined, I was very like, I thought that I could do a lot in a very short time. So for me, it was that reality check of this is a marathon. It's not a sprint whatsoever. And this is going to take years. I sometimes only have the ability to kind of like look like 2 months ahead of me, and I'm just like a very like short-term kind of person. I have a hard time like imagining what's going to happen a year from now. But startups are like, they take a lot of time and effort and energy, and things just don't like span out the way that you think they would, and they don't, as much as they do move fast, it takes time to build products. So that was my biggest like reality check learning experience.
I would say that you're just always having to iterate, and you're always having to be flexible. I would say like for me as a founder, that's like all the time, but then also working for a startup that's like mid-size now. There's so much that happens on a monthly basis, and that you just have to be flexible to that. And I think coming from like a large consulting firm, so much was already established. Like there wasn't really room for flexibility. There wasn't really room for creativity. And you kind of just pivot to someplace that's like, hey, so what are your ideas? We might implement this, moving forward. Like my director, when we were talking about our teams and our software, he was like, hey, so I want you to come up with a weighted algorithm to sort of score the quality of our releases moving forward. And we're actually going to use this company wide. And our company like is now like 1,200 people. And I'm just like, okay. And he's like, so can you kind of come up with some leading indicators of like what makes a good release and successful, based on customer impact? And I'm just like, this man really just like gave me this assignment that's going to affect the entire company, and I'm just supposed to come up with it. But it's like, you have that flexibility. And I just think there's so many more opportunities like that at a startup.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. So I came from a bigger company to a smaller company, not a startup, but still a lot smaller. And I feel like I have a lot more flexibility in terms of what I can do, what I can say, and even just being able to take a risk, because oftentimes in bigger companies, it tends to be a top-down culture. And they have a way of working. So it's kind of hard to do something that's out of line. And for both speakers, I have another question. Have you ever worked in a bigger company? And if you have, how would you compare it with a startup? Pros and cons of both.
So I haven't worked for like a corporate, typical really big company. I've worked mostly in like research, like think tanks, like academic world, and then Techstars, it was just like an outlier, not a typical big company. But I've heard crazy stories from people who worked at, like really big banks and like Goldman Sachs and everything. And I don't think I ever want to go that route. I think like I've just like heard such like horror stories, and like I enjoy the fact that, we have like a flat culture. It's not like there's no hierarchy, right? It's everyone works independently and also collaborates, but no one's telling each other to do what. But there's also still this like healthy tension where we kind of, like argue with each other about ideas, and it's very respectful and friendly and very casual. I think like this is the first time I've actually like gotten so ready. Like I did my hair, you know, like in startups you're just like in your hoodie and you know you're just like you wake up and you like start working. So I like that culture. So I think Sade, you might, since you worked at Deloitte, have
Yeah, I can definitely speak on the differences. I would say that I would also agree in terms of like the more casual kind of environment. I would say that I'm definitely more comfortable working in tech and working at a startup as opposed to working at a consulting firm that's like super corporate, like everything's focused on the client. You have to look extremely professional and like a lot of that stuff matters. And there's a lot of like hierarchy. And I think that it's very sort of like rigid in how you approach things, whether it's like promotion, like there has to be a minimum, you know, amount of years and, you know, this to get promoted. And this is what, you know, consultants, a senior consultant, data scientist, lead data scientist looks like. And things are already set in stone. And so if you ever wanted to get creative or take a new approach, it's really hard to kind of like push that agenda. And at least from a consulting firm, everything is client driven, right? Because like they sign the contract. So it's kind of like whatever the client wants, you know, that's what we're going for, even if it's out of scope, like it's totally fine. And I think that moving to a startup where we are working with our customers, whether it's when it's talking about new features or upgrades or, you know, whatever, but at the core, we're focused on building such a great product and great user experience. I think that a lot of those other things where it's like, you don't have to be super corporate, you know, like it's still like, I would say it's business casual, not 100% casual, but, you know, being able to have that flexibility. When we were in the office, my office is like extremely colorful and bright. And I think they just understand like the true benefit of work-life balance. I actually just our company had summer break, which we were off for a week for the 4th of July week. And we also had a paid holiday for Juneteenth. And so I think that like, I don't know if we really would have had that at, you know, my previous firm or like had that sort of culture where they really encourage you to take time off and, you know, enjoy life and also enjoy your work as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then I have another question about your startup life and how you would handle failure in a startup, specifically if it was bootstrapped. And this can go to Zainab or Sade, whoever wants to answer it.
I'm actually like getting to the stage where investors are reaching out, and I've been talking to founders that have bootstrapped the entire way and founders that have raised, and I'm just not sure what path I want to take because it's people's money, right? And so that is something that I'm really kind of thinking about as a founder, but then also like as a bootstrapper, like there's a lot of risk in that, but also it's a reward because you don't have liabilities to other people. You can really sort of drive your vision and go forward with it. So I'm kind of in that phase right now.
Awesome. And then
I think she was going to say something. She was on mute.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to add to that, Sade, like, you know, I think one of the most difficult parts about the early stage startups is that you face failure every single day. You get rejected. You get, you know, people coming to you and telling you that your idea doesn't make sense, that your business model doesn't make sense, your users want something, this problem doesn't exist. And so there are a lot of failures and there are a lot of lows, but there are also like a lot of highs. So it kind of balances out and you kind of start like, you know, getting like you kind of start making like this like skin that like is like, you kind of just get like heal yourself from these failures and you kind of start getting used to it. It's difficult at first, I will have to say.
Mm-hmm. And then another question for you, Zainab. Do you think accelerators or incubators are helpful for startups?
Oh, 100%. Like the Techstars Accelerator is the one with Barclays is like the most prestigious accelerator for FinTech in the world. And it did crazy things for Lifesaver. It like basically drove, like it had a huge impact on our business development. We got introductions to a lot of banks. That's how I met my founders. That's how we made a lot of hires. That's how we met a lot of investors. Our official advisors that are on our board, we met through Techstars. So I think a good accelerator can really, really like create a huge impact on your company.
Mm-hmm. And then so for our viewers out there who are interested in getting involved in Techstars, what would be the right way to initiate that process, Zainab?
Okay, so there are multiple routes, right? So if you are a founder, early stage founder, then you literally have to apply to their program. They have like a timeline and applications open, and they have deadlines and stuff. So that's one thing. And then the way that I got in was through the associate program. So at Techstars, they hire like 5 associates for each program. People just who've just come out of school or like transitioning between careers who want to get into startups. And we kind of help run the program itself, and we help the founders on a daily basis with like different projects. It can vary from like financial modeling to like pitching to investors. So that's the second route. Third route into Techstars is like if you want to be a mentor. So if you say you're a really experienced person, you're a very senior person, or you're an investor, angel investor, and you want to talk to founders, you can come in as a mentor, a VC mentor, and participate. So go to the website. The associate job listings are on the website. Very easy way to get in. If you're a founder, apply to their program. Mentor, reach out to the managing director of the particular Techstars that you want. There are Techstars like in every city. So just go to the website.
Awesome. And then Sade, you did mention that you were involved in 1871. That is also a startup incubator that's based out of Chicago. And I'm just kind of curious how you got involved in that and how you would initiate the process for someone who's interested in that.
Yeah. So there's like whatever city you're in, I'm sure there's either like national incubators or accelerators or local ones. 1871 is local to Chicago. And I literally looked up incubators in Chicago, and it was the #1 private business incubator. So I applied, I talked to people there, I did a whole tour of it, and I got in. And that was how I sort of just used that for my startup journey. Now I'm at the point where I'm looking at applying to accelerators, and it's kind of tricky because sometimes they do want equity. And so I think as a founder, these are a lot of the questions that I'm coming up now, like, do I want to give equity? And there's some that are no equity accelerators. And so I think when you're at that point, you sort of start to think about what you want to do moving forward. But usually incubators are pretty open to talking to founders and being a resource to founders or people that are interested in potentially creating their own startup. And they usually have a lot of public facing events. And so I know 1871, I went to a few public events before I decided to actually apply and go into it. And I'm sure they have outreach and things like that. So.
That's awesome. That's like so exciting that there's a local startup incubator, and I'm sure there's a lot of other ones in different cities. Yes. I would totally recommend doing the same thing Sade did. So simply just searching up incubator spaces in whatever city you're in to get started on that. So I'm going to take a couple more questions. Just going to wrap it up because we have 3 more minutes left over. And I'm going to kind of focus on something a little more softer. So how are you guys coping with quarantine? What's keeping you safe or sane? Sorry.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I am keeping, I'm like trying to keep sane. I can't say I'm completely sane, like to be completely honest, like I think this is the craziest thing that's happening to all of us. And I am on a visa here. So as you know, like, Trump announced that all international students, like visas are affected, permanent visas, applications are affected. So it's a really, really stressful time for all of us, like the immigrant community. And I think the best way that I'm coping is like I'm just talking to my friends and talking to my family and checking in with people and not isolating myself. And another way is like TikTok. I have to like recommend it, like because like all social media, like everything on your
hello.
Take my information as long as you're making me happy. I mean, like every app right now on your phone is really overwhelming. Like all Twitter, like everyone's like talking about these issues, and everything just reminds you of what's wrong in the world. And sometimes you just don't want to like, not like listen to all of that. And sometimes you just want to laugh, and TikTok does that. So TikTok has been keeping me sane.
Nice. And what about you, Sade?
I think that, yeah, at first I was like, oh, I love quarantine, you know, like I'm just able to like walk more and like, you know, have more breaks. And now I kind of started to go crazy. But I actually picked up the harp. And so I'm learning how to play the harp. I picked it up from the music store. And so that's been something that's like, I literally am on it every day. And yeah, trying to keep sane. So.
Nice. All right. So we have a minute left over. I guess I'll wrap it up. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. I really appreciate everyone coming through and just being here for the community. I hope you gained a lot of valuable knowledge and learned a lot from this session. We continue to do a lot of sessions like this very frequently, whether it's a webinar or IG Live or podcast. So please continue to stay tuned on what we're doing, and hope to see you guys at the next event. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikki. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.